key cities. Ben Wiedemann in Rome and Phil Black in Moscow. Let's begin with Phil. Phil, talk to us about how unusual this is and what we believe the motivations are.
Yeah, very unusual, Chris. Certainly a meeting of two very different personalities, the self-styled Russian strongman and the famously humble Catholic Pope. But at the moment they've got a bit more in common than you would think, particularly on the issue of Syria, where the Vatican has publicly backed Russia's position opposing any sort of outside military intervention in that conflict, even in response to the use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government. Russia likes that because it gives their position much more moral authority. Both parties are also very concerned about the fate of Christian minorities in Syria, across the Middle East and North Africa as well. More broadly, Russia and the Vatican have never been that close because Russia is close to the Russian Orthodox Church. And the Orthodox Church and the Vatican have long historic disagreements. But at the moment, they've got a bit more in common as well, because both churches see themselves as fighting what they describe as a rise of aggressive secularism across Western society, which they say is replacing traditional Christian values. Chris.
All right, Phil, thank you very much for that. Boy, this is so complex. Let's go to Ben Wiedemann now. This is almost a perfect situation for the Roman Catholic Church, given its complexity and the need for nuance. So, Ben, how do we see it? How much of this is about these longer living storylines between the Russian Orthodox and conventional Roman Catholic Church? And how much of it do you believe are about political practicalities, a play by Putin to use some leverage against the U.S. with the Pope and his growing popularity?
Well, certainly I think the immediate concerns are related to the Middle East, related to the plight of Christians in the Middle East, as Phil mentioned. There are much more deeper issues at play. For instance, this really goes back to 1054, to what is called the Great Schism, when Christianity split between the Latin West and the Orthodox East. And there are issues, for instance, about the sequestration of property by Joseph Stalin during the Soviet era, when they took property from the Catholic Church in Russia. And of course, as a result of that, there have not been any meetings between the Catholic Pope and the Eastern Patriarch. But really the focus today, we understand from the Vatican, is on the Middle East, on the plight of Christians in the Middle East, given the turmoil in places like Syria and Egypt. That's really the focus, not those great historical issues, which obviously will take a lot more time to resolve. Chris?
Persecution of Christians across that region, certainly something that's getting more momentum. We haven't been hearing much about it, but it will be very interesting to see who says what after